The NBA rumor mill is in full swing, so it is time to catch up on some of those rumors about the Sacramento Kings. But one thing that is always important to remember in these times of the offseason, where the rumors are flying but nothing can really be done yet, is that we don't know what's true. Everyone's got an agenda out there. Every report that comes out is coming out for a reason by some agent or team or whatever. Some can be completely fake and some are the truth. But the truth doesn't really matter when it gets to entertain us, because thinking about possible moves for the Kings is entertaining at this time in the offseason. But I think one good example of there always being an agenda and the game that gets played between front offices and agents is a quote coming out from Stojaković, who was talking about the De'Aaron Fox trade and the Zach LaVine trade, and pretty much said that the Kings got blackmailed by Fox's agent, Rich Paul, into trading him for Zach LaVine to get Zach LaVine to the Kings and to get Fox to the Spurs where he wanted to go. In my opinion, just a really stupid statement. Like, he got blackmailed. What are you talking about? Rich Paul did his job to get his guys where he needed them to go. The Kings didn't do their job in making the right move for them, and that's kind of final. But I feel like that's a good example of the game that gets played with agents when it comes to player movement. And hopefully this new Kings front office will be a little better at handling that than the past couple of front offices that have not dealt with that well at all. And Scott Perry should be a guy with tons of relationships that allows him to better navigate this landscape. At least that's the hope, right? And it sure seems, based on the reporting, that Scott Perry is looking to make big moves. We have to remember that with the Knicks, he completely overturned the roster in just a matter of a few years. I don't see any reason why any Kings player would be untouchable. Of course, there are guys that are more likely to stay than others, but there's no Kings player that should be untouchable. So hopefully Scott Perry is out there trying to make some big moves, but of course we won't be able to judge him on anything until things get actually done. But the big rumor that was out there is that the Kings are looking for a long-term solution at the point guard position. Everything seems to revolve around the point guard position this offseason for the Kings. Honestly, a little too much for my liking, because yes, a point guard is important, but there are other positions that are important and other things that are important as well. And so hopefully we aren't just focused just on this point guard, but that's where the big rumors and reports are coming from. And so the two big names that got floated with the Sacramento Kings is Darius Garland and Trae Young. And there was a report that the Kings had talks with the Hawks about Trae Young. And then another report came out from James Ham, who is always very trustworthy, that actually said that Scott Perry is out on Trae Young. So that all happened very quickly. We're in on Trae Young and now we're out on Trae Young. But again, anything could be true. That could be a leverage play. But Scott Perry came in. He talked about identity. He talked about two-way players. He talked about bringing those dogs in. And so Trae Young doesn't exactly fit that identity. And you need guys who are just going to go out and score. And I like Trae Young. And I think Trae Young could be a great fit for this team. And similar things can be said about Darius Garland. Both of those guys are still young, very, very good point guards. All-star level point guards that could be the future of the Kings at the point guard position. But the problem, I think, isn't so much as them being the starting point guard for a Kings team in a vacuum, but the problem is who else is on this Kings team currently with Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine. And so if you're not shipping one of those guys out for a Trae Young or a Darius Garland, then you're again stuck with a team with three bad defenders, including a small point guard in either Trae Young or Darius Garland, especially Trae Young. And you're again put into a position where you're paying 40, 50 million to three guys who just maybe are not good enough to be number ones or even number twos on a top tier team. And what we've seen recently in the NBA is the formula is to have two max players and then a bunch of depth after that. And so for the Kings to have second or third options making 40 to 50 million, if you have three of them and none of them can defend, I mean, that's not great. And so that's not to say I'm out on the idea of trading for either of these guys. It just means if you trade for one of these guys, you have to trade at least one, if not both, of Sabonis and Zach LaVine. I mean, if you bring Trae Young in and still have Domantas Sabonis, that's going to be brutal defensively no matter what. And so this is why when I've talked previously about who I think the Kings should target at the point guard position, I've talked about the big names, and going after a big name could be okay if you make the right moves surrounding it. But I just think this season, with where the Kings are at contractually, it makes more sense to go after a vet point guard that's going to be here for a year or two, as some call like a bridge point guard, to bridge the gap between now and your next franchise point guard, whoever that may be. I just don't think the Kings should try to force things, because this Kings team is not one trade away. They're not one star away. They're not one great offensive player away from being a very competitive team. And so it doesn't make sense to try to force that if the fit isn't there. And so sure, if you were moving Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis, you could bring in a Trae Young or a Darius Garland, but it's unlikely that you're moving one of, if not both, LaVine and Sabonis because of their contractual situations. And so in the case of Darius Garland, with the Cavs being a likely second apron team, it makes it harder to trade for Darius Garland. I think it would be likely that a guy like Keegan Murray could be involved in that type of deal, which is just not the direction I think the Kings should be headed. So that's why I don't think a Trae Young or a Darius Garland really makes all that much sense. And so then you have another report coming out about the veteran point guards that the Kings have been looking at. And there were three guys. It was Jrue Holiday, Malcolm Brogdon, and Marcus Smart. And so these are more of the bridge point guard options. Although Jrue Holiday is on a longer term contract, a very big contract, a very bad contract. Jrue Holiday fits this team, and I've talked about him before, but that contract is brutal. And so I think you would either need to be sending bad salary the other way, or you would need to get compensated with picks or players that actually have positive value if you were going to take on Jrue Holiday. And it was interesting, there's another report that said that the Kings did have an offer on the table for Jrue Holiday, but that other offers were in front of it. And so this is another situation where it's like, where is that report coming from? Is that true? Is that just coming from the Celtics to try to get leverage? Is that coming from Jrue Holiday's agent to try to get leverage? I don't know, because what could this deal possibly be on the table? I mean, it must be just an awful deal from the Kings, because I don't think that Jrue Holiday at this point is really a positive asset. And so then you have Brogdon and you have Marcus Smart. And these are two names that I actually really like, because with both of them, you are getting that veteran presence at the point guard position. They're going to be cheap. In the case of Malcolm Brogdon, he's a free agent. You can probably sign him to a short-term, small deal, and he can be that bridge point guard. Because I think with where the Kings are at right now, it's going to be very hard for Scott Perry to make the amount of moves necessary to really make this a very competitive team this season. It feels like kind of a 2-year project where you try to get off some of the salary this year, make some moves to get yourself in the right direction, and then by the end of this year, Zach LaVine will have one more year, which is a player option. Domantas Sabonis will only have the 2 years. DeMar DeRozan will be on a not fully guaranteed one more year, so the contracts will be in a better spot. And I bet DeMar DeRozan will be traded by then. But that's why I'm in favor of a more short-term deal for a point guard, where this offseason is more of an offseason where you're trying to get the books right and you're trying to get yourself moving in the right direction rather than like trying to compete this next season. And then with Marcus Smart, I like that one because he is on, I believe, a $21 million expiring contract with the Washington Wizards. And so if you could get something done where you're either getting assets along with that contract, or you're sending out more money and just exchanging some money with the Wizards, I think that could be a good move to get a veteran. Obviously, Marcus Smart has had his struggles in the past couple of seasons, but get a former Defensive Player of the Year at the guard position, get a leader, which I really like in Marcus Smart. He's not going to be that offensive playmaking point guard that's going to run your offense. Definitely not. But I just like his defense, his leadership, his expiring contract, and probably cheap to obtain him. Because like I said, I think the worst thing the Kings could do right now is try to force something like they're one trade away when they're not one trade away. Now moving on to another report from Mark Stein. This one is by far the most interesting report to me. And so it says, the Sacramento Kings have expressed confidence that they can trade for a first round pick in the lower end of the draft. The Kings are looking to select as high as the early 20s in this upcoming draft. So with the Kings not having a first round pick, they're looking to trade into the first round. And that is super exciting for me because I want the Kings to have an exciting young player from this draft. I want the Kings to just have more exciting young players that we can get behind and look towards the future in general. I should be coming out with a draft preview for the Kings very shortly, so I won't get into who the Kings could be selecting with a pick that they trade for now. But the pick that I'm looking at is the Orlando Magic pick, which is the 25th pick. Because the Orlando Magic have 2 first-round picks, they have 16 and they have 25. So it would make sense if they draft at 16, get their guy, and then maybe want to trade that 25th pick. Also, I've talked all offseason about how the Kings and the Magic just seem like perfect trade partners. And a report came out that the Magic were looking to move off of Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, and 2 first-round picks to make an upgrade in their rotation. Like those 4 things, Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, the 2 first-round picks, those 4 assets are what they're looking to move to make improvements. And so I feel like that just makes a lot of sense. Maybe a Malik Monk deal that could land the Kings some of those players plus the 25th pick. And so that report of the Kings looking to move into the draft is the thing that has me most excited, and also the thing that kind of brings me the most confidence in this front office. Again, like I said earlier, I'm not trying to judge based on rumors. That would be stupid to just be super optimistic or pessimistic about a front office based on rumors when we haven't seen this front office do anything. Because some sources say big moves are coming. Some sources say that Sabonis and Levine are safe on this team. There's no point in really praising or criticizing anything yet. Other reports are saying that multiple players within the Kings organization want stability or they want to be shipped out. But Scott Perry wanting to move into the draft rather than wanting to move off of draft capital, if that's the case, then that's giving me a lot of confidence in the direction that the Sacramento Kings are headed. And I always love rookies to cheer for in Summer League. Unfortunately, the Kings aren't hosting or even participating in the California Classic this year, which is just so weird to me. It's like the vibes around the Kings have been so bad. And then you also take away the California Classic, one of the things that I look forward to the most in the summer. Like that was the one thing we had, that was the one thing we consistently had was the California Classic. And that one year they moved it to San Francisco, but the Kings still participated. And that was very lame. I think it was last year. Was it last year that the Kings just had 2 teams, one playing in Sacramento, one playing in San Francisco? That was fine by me. I liked that. But now, not just are the Kings not hosting the California Classic, they're also not even participating in it. Maybe it's because the Kings don't have a first round pick. They don't have a lottery pick. But Devin Carter didn't get to play in Summer League last year. It would have been fun to see him in person at the California Classic. So that's very disappointing. Some other random news that kind of involves the Kings around the league. Maybe you guys have seen what's going on with the New York Knicks coaching search after they fired Tibbs, where they are requesting to speak to like every team's head coach and every team is denying them permission, which is just hilarious. I guess why not just try to steal a coach from another team? Sure, but it's so funny they're getting denied every single time. But then news came out that Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins were the front runners. So I just think it's funny that the Knicks could replace Tom Thibodeau with Mike Brown or Taylor Jenkins, or what if it's Mike Malone? And I just feel like all of those coaches get criticized for the same things every one of their former team fans hate them for the same reason. They all get fired for the same reason. Every team just fires their coach and then replaces them with the same thing, and then it goes well for a year, and then the second year things go poorly and they fire them. It's just a never-ending cycle. And I think the way that teams in the NBA, also just teams in sports in general, just move off head coaches so quickly and scapegoat head coaches every time something goes bad. Well, I think it shows that coaching is more of an art than a science, and I think it also just shows that coaches will always be scapegoated. Even if your team gets to the conference finals, somebody within the organization is going to butt heads with the coach and they're going to get fired. There's just almost no stability in head coaching, and I don't like that, but it's just the way it is. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. Like I said, I will be coming out with a Sacramento Kings draft preview coming shortly, looking at some guys that the Kings could maybe take in the 20s if they were to trade into the first round, or that they could take with their second round pick. But until then, or until other news breaks, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.